Welcome to Positive Atheism English Channel. Today, in our program, Leaves from Gora's Life, written by Dr. Sharma Marla, I will read out you from the last episode where I have left regarding the contact of Gora with communist movement. Another friend, Sri Chennupati Ramakotaya of the same village, a gentleman, saw through the whole game of how Gora was harassed by the landlord, and then he offered a place in his garden at his disposal. And so, after staying for about a year in that first garden, they shifted to another part of the village and have been continuing in that new place since 1948. Anyway, the first experience at Patamata revealed to Gora how the caste-minded people reacted to the attempts of removal of the castes. They appreciated the theory, but they objected to the practice. During the first year of his stay at Patamata, besides the incident of the legal action against him, compelling him to shift from the first place where he stayed, there were two other noteworthy incidents. They wanted to conduct an experiment on community living. They wanted to live together. Two families from Mudunuru shifted along with him to Patamata and stayed with Gora. They had their own children with them. They all tried to have a common kitchen and live in common. In India, on account of the caste difference, usually families do not live together unless it be a joint family. Now, it was easy for menfolk to adjust themselves, but the women who are not very much educated and who do not have many opportunities to move with wider society could not adjust themselves. In spite of the persuasion, sometimes the pressure of the menfolk of the other two families, they could not pull on together for a long time, and Gora objected to the pressure by the menfolk to compel the women to adjust themselves to common life. And so, they parted after 4 or 5 months of living together. They could not succeed in that kind of common living. Gora doesn't attribute motives to blame anybody for this except the failure in the circumstances. Naturally, the families of the two friends got over the caste prejudices, but they could not achieve a kind of common understanding for living together. The second incident was with regard to his leaning towards the communist way of life. The communist movement was spreading very wide in this part of the country, Andhra Pradesh, where he was living. And by 1947, they were on the peak of popularity. They too believed in common living, economic equality, removal of caste barriers, and contact with untouchables. There were many common points in the programs between them. So, some of these workers and some top leaders also approached Gora and suggested that he might join the Communist Party. Of course, he doesn't like the party label, the party system, which was political sectarianism. But the communist movement, he liked in general its ideology and programs. The workers were very much devoted, full of sacrifice. So he liked the communist movement and he had no objection in joining the communist movement, but he raised some points which were based on different attitudes. As an atheist, Gora believed in the freedom of the individual. He considered that the individual creates the society and is government and he is its master. The individual is not a part of the society, but society is a part of the individual in the sense that society is the commonness that individuals develop. And beyond the commonness, there is the personality of the individual. Therefore, the society is only a part of the individual, a part overlapping with other individuals. Similarly, the state is that part of the individual where he cooperates with the governmental laws. A state also is maintained by the taxes which the individuals pay. If a considerable number of individuals withhold the government, it is bound to collapse. So it is not the individual that is depending upon the government, but the government that is depending upon the individual. On account of this atheistic way of understanding, Gora considered the individual supreme. Also, he has considered that the individual is the master of his circumstances. He is not a slave. It is not the social being that determines the individual consciousness. On the contrary, atheistically, it is the individual consciousness that determines their morals as social being. So he laid down much stress upon the expression of the individuality. If most of the people express their individuality, there could be no inequality because all humans are equal and are similar in talents and needs and strength. Atheistically, Gora understood, therefore, that the individual is supreme, but in the Marxian philosophy, the individual is subordinate to the material circumstances. In actual practice, it is the individual that works, but philosophically, Marxists think that individuals are subordinate, but everywhere it is the individual that is supreme. Gora told his communist friends about this difference in understanding and the philosophical and political difference. He said he must have the freedom to talk about this philosophical difference. In practice, the communists also use freedom to work, though they talk that they are subordinate to circumstances. It is like the Hindu theory of fatalism. The Hindu thinks that he is a fated to live in a particular way, but in actual practice, he uses his own freedom. The Christians may pray to God, "Thy will be done," but in actual practice, every believer has his own will. So there is some difference between the theory and the practice in the theistic way of life. So Gora considered the Marxist philosophy godless theism. It is godless because Marxists do not believe in the existence of a God. At the same time, they subordinate the individual to circumstances of life, the material circumstances. Gora wants the individual not to feel a slave, but to consider himself to be free and to rebel against all kinds of injustice. The Marxists do it, they rebel. In practice, they are all atheists, but theoretically, they are theistic in the sense that they subordinate the freedom of the individual to material circumstances. So Gora told them that Marxist philosophy was godless theism, materialistic theism, and he kept his mind open to be convinced to the contrary. Still at that time, he told them, though he agreed totally with their programs of life, still there was that philosophical difference. Gora detested secret ways of life. Secrecy is sectarianism. When secrecy is adopted, we exclude a part of the society from our confidence. Therefore, we must adopt open ways of life, says Gora. Communists mostly believe in underground programs of secrecy. They think that we must establish the dictatorship of the Communist Party first, though it is called the dictatorship of the proletariat, and through the dictatorship, they must bring about economic equality through the abolition of private property. Gora understands that method, but at the same time, he made his differences also very plain, and he wants to live an open life. Gora said that all his co-workers must be admitted into the Communist Party along with him. The communist friends who had their talks with him agreed to take him immediately into the Communist Party, but according to their methodology, they would put his other co-workers on a probation for about a year or two and then take them in. Gora could not leave his friends, his colleagues in the atheistic field. So, on these 3 points, Gora did not agree. Firstly, upon the emphasis that he laid upon free will and the freedom to discuss the philosophical difference. Secondly, upon the insistence upon open methods. And thirdly, upon admitting all his colleagues into the Communist Party. So, they parted. He did not join the communist movement at that time. They have remained friends even today. As Gora is friendly with all people, so he is friendly with the communists also. But his philosophical difference about the freedom of the individual and object to secret methods still remains. And from here, I shall continue in the next episode again. Thank you.
For more videos, please subscribe to our Positive Atheism English Channel, presented by Dr. Samaram Multi-Channel Network, which has more than 18 crore views, and click the bell icon for notification of our new videos.
Please download Samaram Multi-Channel app and watch your favorite channels from your mobile. App available on Google Play Store and subscribe to the channels.